too close for comfort, lady.
Damn.
What, you never seen a talking gargoyle before? Welcome to Illuminati headquarters. I mean, Denver International Airport.
This is awesome.
Hello. Do I know you?
Are you hungry?
Oh, I'm starving. You got anything for me? Those flowers look delicious.
Oh, it's because of the conspiracy.
Oh, it's because of the conspiracy. Look at me. I'm a little know-it-all. Will you get back over here? I got a question about this conspiracy. Did you have to buy an extra seat for your hat, sir? Sir, are you stealing a desk? Sir, you have resting, confused face. Do you have a favorite animal or pet?
A caterpillar?
A caterpillar? Wouldn't you rather have a gargoyle?
No!
Yes! You know, you can actually put the phone down and have a conversation with me. But no, I'm a millennial. I've got to post it. I've got to snap face it and Twitter book it. Excuse me, miss, I've got a stain that needs some polishing. Can I borrow your cleaning cart?
Oh, no.
I need your help. Guess what my favorite food is?
What?
No, I want you to guess.
Human?
Cumin. Yes, I love cumin.
I said human.
Oh, I thought you said cumin. I'm a real big spice guy. Furry hat guy, I can't believe you are wearing one of my friends.
Hey, this isn't your friend.
It used to be until you put it on your head, man.
How old are you?
Well, 243 years old now. I look good for my age, don't I?
Yeah, you work out?
All the time. You should see my squats.
You're such a sweet talker.
Will you take me back home with you?
Let's go. I have some space in my backpack.
Actually, I think you have too much baggage for me.
All right. Always happy when the volume works on that one. So you can tell what DIA has really done with all these conspiracy theories. One of the things that, if you're not familiar, DIA's got a long history of the conspiracy theories. You go onto a lot of different websites. All you got to do is type Denver Airport conspiracy, and you'll probably pull up about 7 or 8, sometimes 10 different websites. And then other keywords will get you other websites related to it. So darkest conspiracy theories about Denver's bizarre airport. Having been there when it was dirt, having been there during construction, and having been there since opening until, let's see, we opened in 95, I was there till 98. There's some bizarre things about that airport, but most people, it's all normal bizarreness. It's not unusual bizarreness. So Sarah already gave you the bio. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time with that. The only thing really relevant here is the Denver Airport book. And that kind of started this whole concept of doing this type of a presentation. I was asked to do it by Independence Aviation several months ago. And they said, can you come up with something unique? And I thought, well, let's try this. So this is my 3rd time with this presentation. And I enjoy doing it because I like getting into all of this stuff. So why should you believe me, and why I won't argue with you if you don't? First off, I don't argue with conspiracy theorists at all, because if your mind is already made up, that's your truth. No matter what I say, it's not going to change it. Just pretty much as simple as that. And once you argue it, you become part of the conspiracy theory. So if you ever talk to somebody that's very, very passionate about their conspiracy theories, and I'm not saying all of them are untrue, but when you get somebody that's very compassionate about it or passionate about it, they tend not to want to move off their position. So I figure we're wasting time. Let's talk about something else and have a beer and not waste our time. So a little bit of background. I was the assistant director of security at Denver International from before we opened, when we opened, and after we opened for the next 3 years after that. I started in airport operations as an airport operations communications rep, then an airfield assistant airfield ops manager. So I've had access to literally every part of that airport: runways, taxiways, tunnels. My badge opened every door in the airport. My keys opened every door in the airport. Tunnels, I could go anywhere I wanted in the tunnels. There was no place I was not allowed to go. If there was a door that I couldn't get into, it was a phone call to maintenance to come down and open the door. There was nothing that was ever denied because I was the assistant security director, and myself and my boss had unfettered access to the airport. We needed to. Also, myself and some outstanding co-authors wrote the book on the history of Denver's airport. I thought there'd be a bunch of books out there, but when I started, I called the publisher one day and I said, when are you guys going to do a book on Denver's airport? And they said, well, we don't have anybody to write it right now. Do you happen to know anybody? And I said, well, it just so happens I do. I really didn't want to write this because it was a tremendous amount of work. I was really hoping somebody else would. But once I got into the process, you just can't stop at that point. You got to keep going. It did take a lot of work. This is one of the days where I was sweating it out in the archives of DIA. The archive room, you're looking at about how big it is. Just to the left of those boxes are some shelves in the wall. I did have friends down there from time to time. They'd skitter on through when they felt like it. They'd leave me presents for the next time I came back. But what I learned rapidly is that Denver had no archive system. Literally, it was just 70, 80, maybe 100 big, thick notebooks of slides. And then there'd be scrapbooks. And then there'd be old videotape. And it was sitting there going through all of this stuff was just, I don't know how many hours I spent out there going through all that stuff, but it was quite extraordinary. So the other thing is there wasn't anything I didn't have access to there. The only thing that I found missing was specific photos from 9/11. But I have enough friends that worked at the airport during 9/11. I had plenty of those photos as well. But I did think that was kind of odd that those would be the only photos missing from the archives. So maybe you can take that and run with it as a conspiracy. I'm skeptical, but I'm open, which means if you've got something, some evidence or something to prove to me that some theory is correct, I'm open to that. These are literally 3 of my bookshelves. And you can see that I've got a couple of books on UFO literature. Studied the topic for a long time. I've had a couple sightings myself, and I'm actually a member of the Mutual UFO Network. It says since 2018, it's actually been since about 1999. A couple of years I dropped out and came back in, so they just had to update that. So I'm open to this. I want to know, hey, if you got an angle, I'm ready to take a look at that and investigate that and go with that. Pardon me. Late in the day, I got to keep the Red Bull going. Denver's airport is in my DNA. This is from the 1970s. And let's see if I can get this working okay. Actually, that is my Nana, my grandma, and my mom. Tell from the hairstyle back in the 70s. A little bit more history to it than that in terms of my ties to that airport, because I've been going to that airport since the early 70s. We'd go pick up my Nana from Michigan, where I was actually born. And she'd always, obviously pick her up at the airport. And I just fell in love with airports. I love going to the airport. I always wondered where the tugs went when they drive underneath the building. I'm like, to me, that was like the biggest mystery ever. Because I go to the airport and I'd see these tugs drive under the building. And to me, that was some unknown world. I had no idea what was under there. But all I knew is I wanted to know. There we go. So the current site of Denver International Airport, just to the east or just to the west of that, was originally Denver International Raceway. And this is back in the early to mid 70s. It was originally called Thunder Road. So when they announced the opening of this new airport that they were going to build, my mom was like, hey, I used to work there. So it's kind of interesting. She worked in the tower doing the timing for the drag racing. She was very much she was part of the racing culture at that time. And so my dad and I would sit in the stands, watch drag races all day. And at the time, there was nothing out there. There was miles of nothing. You drove to nothing, and then you drove farther to get to nothing. Nothing was out there at the time. If you go on Google Earth now, you can actually find where the old drag strip is. And I put the picture up there, and it's actually just west of the airport now. Well, my DNA with this airport continues. What I didn't know is just how tied into this place I am. There we go. And this should click in a second. If not, I'll make it happen. So most people have probably never even heard of this. It's called Eastwood Estates. And what used to be there was a mobile home park. Ironically enough, my mom worked there too. So she was a closer doing deals for mobile homes. Stay tuned. This will get relevant real quick as to why this is all tied together. So this is at 56 and Pena. If you drive through there today, you can see where all these trees are that just look like a clump of trees out in the middle of nowhere, on the middle of a field. That used to be filled with mobile homes called Eastwood Estates. Also, there was another location, and this was really out in the sticks. At the time, once you pass Chambers and I-70, there wasn't anything. There, I mean, literally, they're just, the next stop was Kansas. So before you really saw any sort of population, you were in Goodland. But we used to have to drive. There was a Hardee's restaurant at I-70 in Chambers. And at the time, I was a security officer, and this is the late 80s. I just graduated from Metro, wanted a job at the airports. I took whatever was available, which was a security guard. Well, they started sending us out to these places to patrol because the city of Denver had acquired these properties to get rid of them to build the new airport. Because by the late 80s, they were already doing all the property acquisition for the airport. Arrowhead, this is kind of interesting. We would have to drive to Eastwood Estates, keeping in mind it was already in the sticks. Pena Boulevard did not exist. 56th Avenue was not improved. It was a dirt road at the time. So we drive out to 56th Avenue, and then we'd start heading east until we came to some road where we started going north. And eventually, out of all the farmland would appear another mobile home park called Arrowhead. Now, the weird thing about this is the city of Denver had already come through. They had already purchased all the mobile homes. They had moved everybody out. So these were all abandoned. And we were supposed to go patrol these things on a daily basis. We are 30 minutes from help, and that's minimum time. If the cop happens to be driving by Tower Road on I-70 and can make the exit, Arrowhead was still 30 minutes from I-70. So when you're out there, you have no help. We were also unarmed. Now, this is where things tend to get a little weird. Before we even get to the conspiracy theories, let me give you a little idea about what it was like patrolling these areas and really where some of these theories came from. Because you have to go way back before we even started building the airport to identify some of this. So we had a trailer. This is not to scale. The trailer is not to scale, but if I did it to scale, you wouldn't be able to see it on the map. As security officers, we go out to Eastwood Estates, and all you do is drive around this little park all day. Well, you can only drive that park so often before you're bored. So that was our security shack. It was a mobile home. And we'd go in there to sit down, maybe read a magazine or something, fill out our log. Then we go look outside because you almost could see the whole area from just standing on the porch. Well, all sorts of rumors started. Rumors of satanic rituals, both at Eastwood and Arrowhead, and then also throughout the whole area out there. We had certain situations where we were unarmed. So the most we could do, our lifeline was our radio. And if that quit, you just hope the car started and you could drive as fast as possible. Then we started to get stories from security officers out there who started to see apparitions. They were finding artifacts from literally from satanic rituals hanging on the fences, both at Eastwood and Arrowhead. Keep in mind, these places are abandoned. And when one of us had to go to lunch or dinner, we were only one person at a time out there. So you called your supervisor on the radio and said, hey, I got to go to lunch. You drove to Hardee's, got your lunch. Well, the place was abandoned during that time. And in the evening time, it could be abandoned for a couple hours if you decided to go get some dinner or something. We didn't have to be on site the whole time. Plus, it just took forever to leave, get dinner, come back. So at night, from both Eastwood and Arrowhead, we could see fires burning a few miles away, like big fires. And a good friend of mine, who's also a Metro grad, his brother was a Denver cop at the time. And so we were talking to him one day, and I'm like, what are all these fires out there? He says, usually they're satanic rituals. And I'm like, you have to be kidding me. There's no way this is true. He goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm out there by myself, and with all this going on out there, should I be afraid? He goes, yeah, probably, because we're not going to respond. Okay, why not? He goes, we know what's going on. We're not coming out there. Okay, great. So I'm going to be the next human sacrifice if I can't drive fast enough to get out of there. So I hear all these stories of these apparitions and stuff, and I had never seen anything. You're in those buildings. There's a clubhouse. I mean, you hear stuff all the time. The building settles here or there, or the wind blows through and knocks something over. You get used to it. One day, I was driving around the park, and let's see, where was I? Yeah, it was probably over in this area. Keep in mind, there was mobile homes throughout this whole area. And I see somebody walk up and go in the door. That's the only door that's open. The other back doors were sealed shut. They were literally nailed, sealed shut. There's no way to open or close them, at least without making a ton of noise. Well, I see somebody go in the trailer, which wasn't completely unusual because we had people coming out to show property a lot, just because the city of Denver was selling these homes at this point. So I'm like, all right, wonder who went in the trailer. And sometimes we'd have a supervisor come out or from someone from city of Denver. So I had a clear line of sight from when I saw them walk in until I drove up. And so I knew they were inside. I knew they hadn't come out. I go inside the trailer. I'm like, hey, anybody here? Don't hear anything. So I walk to the back of the trailer. I have to pass an empty room. So I check that out. Pass the bathroom. Check that out. Get to the very back room, open the door, check that out. There's nobody in this trailer. And then I look at the closet and I'm like, oh crap. If somebody got in here and is hiding in the closet, I don't want to deal with this. Now, even though we weren't supposed to carry weapons, most of us did. Some of the security officers would carry guns, not tell anybody. I carried a PR-24 nightstick with me at the time. So, which I had on me. So I'm like, all right, let's open this door and find out who's inside. So got the door open. Nobody. I go back. There was no way anybody could have gotten past me coming into that trailer. I go back out to the front of the trailer. The footsteps that the person would have made walking in are gone. The only footsteps out there were mine because I had distinct shoes. We had to wear steel-toed shoes and stuff like that. And they leave a very distinct impression because of the weighting of the shoe. I couldn't find any other shoe prints whatsoever. So if you want to know the early history of all of that property, that's probably where some of these theories started, because it didn't really start with a good backstory. You take that for what it's worth. There's actually many Denver airports, and this isn't the first time that we've had conspiracy theories surrounding them. If we go back a little bit in time, just to bring you forward in time, to give you an idea where we're at today, there's your original Denver airport. This would eventually become Stapleton Airfield. They'd make some adjustments to the facility. There we go. That's only slightly before my time, by about 10, 15 years. But there's your old Stapleton Airport. Now, here's what most people don't know. Stapleton had its secrets too, including a labyrinth of underground tunnels. The tunnels ran through the public area right underneath what you're looking at here, which is the old public area at the old Stapleton Airport. How did I know this? Well, I was a security officer also at Stapleton Airport, because we patrolled Stapleton and then we patrolled the future Denver airport sites. So just whatever you got assigned to that day is what you did. I found the tunnels one day through an access door that nobody had ever really walked into before, and I even called my supervisor. I'm like, do you know this stuff's down here? He goes, no, I didn't know it was down here. So I went up walking through the tunnels like an idiot by myself. And the tunnels went the entire length of the airport. And it was just this labyrinth of tunnels going all the way through. Occasionally you'd see some old equipment in there. It was kind of weird because the wall would go about up to my shoulder, and then it would just be dirt going back into some abyss, which I never really wanted to explore the whole time. Well, it turns out that there was this aviation fraternity at Metro at the time. And this was back in the 80s when you could still do a lot of stuff in terms of the initiation process to get into fraternities and sororities. Well, it was a professional aviation fraternity, so it was both men and women. And as part of initiation, they would take their pledges out, make them wear stupid costumes and walk through Stapleton Airport, basically on a treasure hunt. Well, back then you could just walk right through security. You didn't need a ticket or anything. So we had stuff all over the airport where people could go and look for it. Well, after I graduated, they came back, and the fraternity folks, and they're like, we're going to do the thing at Stapleton. And they knew about the tunnels at this point. They're like, can we do something with the tunnels? We'll just make the pledge go through there by themselves. It'll be really scary. I'm like, well, it's a public area. It literally is. So works for me. Well, after that night, I'm watching the news a couple of days later, and the news report starts off that there was some major security breach at the airport, that there was this fraternity group who had their pledges running through the tunnels underneath the runways. And I used to be a public information officer at Jeffco before I was the airport director. And I'm sure a lot of you know how things get a little skewed in the press. No, it's completely under the public area, and literally anybody could go under there. The door wasn't locked on either end. So at that point, being a security officer out there, now I'm scared to death because I'm the one that told them about the tunnels. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Whatever happened at that point, I don't know. I guess they used them. I'll let you guys figure out what my involvement was in that at the time. But we had tunnels. A lot of people didn't know that. I can also confirm that Stapleton was visited by a spaceship. I was there when it happened, and it was the Space Shuttle Enterprise. So that's the closest thing we ever got to a spacefaring vehicle out there. The Enterprise never actually flew in space. It was the test model, which is why it has the cone on the back. But when it was flying across the country, it actually needed to stop and refuel at the airport. All right, let's get into the real conspiracy theories here. First theory. Many people said we didn't need a new airport. Many people were wrong. The first theory was, why are you building this new airport when you don't even need it? What's interesting is when we did the research in the book for the history of Stapleton and Denver, we could almost draw a direct correlation between the newspaper articles in the mid-1920s when they were building Stapleton and the newspaper articles in the mid-1980s when they started to build Denver International. The press came out and said, you don't need a new airport. The engineers and planners were all coming out. These were consultants. They weren't people that actually worked at the airport. They're saying you don't need it. You should, if you're going to build a new airport, build it at Lowry. They already have a field. There was accusations back in the 1920s that the mayor of Denver at the time, Mayor Stapleton, was making money on all these land deals for the acquisition of Stapleton Airport. And all of those came to light again. The mid-80s, there was accusations that Mayor Pena and Governor Romer owned land where Denver International was being constructed, backdoor land deals, you don't need the airport, and all this other stuff. Well, we opened Denver International in a snowstorm that would have closed Stapleton Airport. Stapleton Airport at the time was the biggest blockade of the aviation system in the United States at the time. And I worked there throughout the 80s. There was only about a 3-year period of time where I didn't work at the airport. I was in the US Coast Guard for a period of time. And I still remember circling, because that's back when they did holding patterns most of the time instead of sequencing you as you came across the country. I remember circling that airport for hours just trying to get in and land. It was a mess. It was a nightmare. So they took a look at maybe we should expand the airport to the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. Kind of a problem with that. Once you start taxiing from the Rocky Mountain Arsenal to Stapleton, it's going to take you over half an hour to taxi. Now, there are some airports like, get this thing shut off. There's some airports like JFK, Atlanta Hartsfield. Atlanta Hartsfield, one time I fell asleep when I got on the plane, woke up a half hour later and we were still on the ground because we were still taxiing out to the runway. I asked the guy next to me, I'm like, are we driving to Denver or what? Well, that's what would have occurred had we went on the Arsenal. Plus, we weren't sure if the Arsenal was clean. The US government, the Environmental Protection Agency, all told us it's clean. The thing is, they used to store chemical weapons up there. And there weren't a whole lot of people in Stapleton at the time that wanted to go dig in that dirt. I don't blame them. They're like, oh, but there's wildlife out there and all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, they got 2 heads. Okay, they really didn't, but we didn't want to go dig into that stuff. And actually, here's a little side story that most of you don't know about Jeffco Airport or Rocky Mountain Metro. I was the airport director there during 9/11. And 2 months afterwards, we got a call from the FAA to the FAA tower to shut us down. We had no idea why. The tower called us, said, we're shut down. I said, why? Because the FAA told us we are. Well, I had to work through a congressman and a US senator to finally get to the bottom of why we were shut down. And we were shut down for an indeterminate amount of time. So they didn't know how long the shutdown was going to be. So finally, about a day later, I got my answer. And they said, well, you're near a nuclear facility. That's the old Rocky Flats plant. And I said, yeah, it's now an environmental reclamation site. It's been totally cleaned up. Get us off that list, because there'd been some threats to crash into a nuclear facility, and we were an airport by a nuclear facility. I said, it's not a nuclear facility anymore. And they said, yeah, it still is. I'm like, well, according to the EPA and according to you, the US government, no, it's not. And they're like, no, really, it still is. Okay. Well, working with one of the congressmen at the time, Mark Udall, he starts looking into this thing and found out there were still plutonium rods buried in the dirt out at Rocky Flats. And it turned out to be a massive congressional investigation because Congress had basically been lied to that this was clean. And for you today, a lot of you know there's a lot of homes built out there. I have a lot of friends that live out there, and they have to sign easements that say they won't dig more than like a foot or two beneath the ground. If that's in property you're about ready to acquire out there, I'd probably pass. Go somewhere else. We still don't know what's buried out there. It took us a week to get the airport reopened once we kind of convinced everybody of what was going on. But now you can kind of see why we didn't want to go to the Arsenal either. So we ended up going to DIA. And I got to be involved in this. It was really cool. Push night, February 27th, 1995, we moved an entire airport. Everything non-essential had already been moved, but we still had to run Stapleton right up until the night of February 27th. So I happened to be there working in ops that night, or security that night. And I heard the last notice to airmen issued that closed Stapleton Airport forever. Ran downstairs, jumped in my ops vehicle, drove all the way out to DIA when it was already starting to snow, and worked the 24-hour shift open DIA. It's truly one of the most momentous occasions of my life, because how often do you get to see an airport of that magnitude close and then an airport of that magnitude open? Truly once in a lifetime. The runway layout and Nazi symbolism. Now I'm talking to a bunch of pilots. So you guys are going to get this right away. One of the big theories is that the layout at Denver International, the runway layout, represents, when you look at it from the top, a Nazi symbol. So if you take a look at the runway layout and you activate your imagination just a little bit, you can basically draw a Nazi swastika on it. This has long been a conspiracy theory that this was done intentionally. Every pilot looking at this right now knows exactly why those runways are aligned the way they're supposed to be aligned, because we align them with predominant wind. And those are the predominant winds in the area. Plus, if it was really a swastika, the Nazis never put it like this. They always put it sideways. So if we really wanted to line it up like a swastika, we would have angled the runways that way. Simple engineering decision. And if we take a look at the old Stapleton Airport, which had a crosswind runway at the time, this always gives me a second to take a drink. The old Stapleton Airport, they got rid of the crosswind runway because they found they didn't need it anymore. So what that basically left, this is the overhead view of that. That was the original configuration. Bring those in a little bit closer so you can see them. So the crosswinds are eliminated because we find we just don't need them. The winds don't blow those directions. So now you can see the very beginnings. If you were to move this out to Denver's airport, there's the final Stapleton runway configuration. And lo and behold, the whole runway configuration is north, south, east, and west. So not a real stretch to figure out why we did that at Denver's airport, because that's the way the winds blow. Thought I'd show you this too. A document not seen very often. This is in my campus office, and that's the ultimate build out of Denver's airport. So if they get to where they're supposed to be, that's what they'll eventually have. And this is, keep moving my mouse. This is the next runway they're working on. It's meant for cargo operations predominantly, but obviously they can land anything on there. It's 12,000 feet. The 16,000 foot runway is in place today, as many of you know. That was very contentious, and that was even more conspiracy theories. Why do we need a 16,000 foot runway when everything in the inventory can land and take off on 12,000 feet? Well, some of us actually speculated, well, maybe we were an alternate landing site for the space shuttle because it's literally long enough to have landed the shuttle if it needed to. But the airport said, no, we're planning for the future. And we think in the future, sometimes we're going to need longer runways. So they went ahead and built it. Didn't help the conspiracy theory stuff out very much because all of a sudden they're wondering why we're doing this. So the next theories, all these kind of go together, these couple of theories here. The secret underground tunnels, the New World Order, the deep state conspiracy theories, and the lizard people. I've met a few of the lizard people. They're wonderful people. They're very nice, but we'll get to them. So are there really 6 tunnels underneath DIA? Well, sort of. If you count that 4 of them are actually above ground, they start at level 3 because when the baggage system didn't work, we had to turn the level 3 parking garage into a bag sort area. And level 3 is actually ground level when you start heading out, once you go into the baggage system. So if you consider that a tunnel, then it's another tunnel. Or if you count the 6 that spur off from the main tunnels to the ramp areas, which are used for baggage transfer. Or yes, the bottom sentence actually down there is true. You got anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 people working that airport at a particular time. Stuff happens. Being in security, we found stuff and people all the time. So the theory, the airport was 16 months behind schedule, ran way over budget. Public numbers, you'll hear $5 billion to build the airport. That's wrong. Cost $14 billion to build the airport. Because when they say $5 billion, they don't take into account all the debt that the airport had to issue, which included another, $11 billion of debt that was issued through bonds. So now the airport's made tons of money ever since. It's proven itself. But let's get to the rest of this. The 16 months, they basically said that's long enough to build an elaborate network of tunnels for the post-apocalyptic government. All this is going to build on itself because conspiracy theories tend to do that. Well, the counter argument here is Paul Dempsey, Andrew Getz, and Joseph Slig. I'm Polish. You'd think I'd be able to figure out how to pronounce his last name, and I wrote an article with him. But anyway, they wrote a book called Lessons Learned, Denver International Airport, and it talks about the nature of large government projects. Almost none of them come in on time, and also almost none of them come in on budget. They're simply too massive to predict. And they showed that through this particular book, which very difficult to find now. I hold on to my copy like it's the Holy Grail, just because it's such a hard book to find nowadays. But they made a very compelling case for that. So what about underground? I found this online when I was doing the research for the presentation. And the line here says, it does not help that you can't go underground and view the tunnels. Access is denied. Well, yeah, it's a security area. Not just anybody can do it. But going through the public relations office, and I even used to do this when I was there, we brought plenty of people down to those tunnels. In fact, hundreds of people have been in those tunnels because those tunnels come out from the train system. And I responded to a few fires on the train. You can tell when there's a fire on the train when you show up at the train station, it's full of smoke. But the emergency egress routes for that train go right into the baggage tunnels. So there's literally been hundreds of people there because we've had a couple of fires. Also, when you have a tornado, some of the doors will shuttle you down to the baggage system. Now it's a major security headache because now we got hundreds of people in a secure area, but better that than having hundreds of people being injured or killed by a tornado or a fire. So they have contingencies for it, how to clean it up and stuff. The tunnels don't look like this, much to the conspiracy theorists' chagrin, I guess. Anybody that's been at Denver International, you know what those tunnels look like. The platforms there, those are for maintenance, and they're also for the emergency egress. So if you're coming out of the train, there's doors all along the side of here. And where those doors come out is right here. Automated guideway transit system. Most people didn't know it was actually named that. We just always called it the train. But that's where you'll end up. Because when the baggage system didn't work, we had to build a network of tunnels to haul the bags underneath ground to the concourses and back. To haul that stuff, think about it, you know what DI looks like. Think about hauling that with carts across those vast paved areas where all the aircraft are crossing. That would have just been a massive safety issue. So we let the baggage system sit at the ceiling and built out the rest of the tunnels to run the carts. The baggage system never did work. They invested billions of dollars into it. One of the challenges, and I can speak to this personally from seeing it, your bag would go into this little container and there'd be little wheels and there was a fin underneath each one of these things. Well, the wheels would spin, the fin would hit it, and it'd launch it to the next set of wheels. The problem is if that fin got bent just a little bit, then the thing would slam shut and the bag would take off. So you'd be walking through the tunnels underneath, and all of a sudden, here comes a suitcase flying over your head. We'd walk through and we'd literally see 7, 8 suitcases. And we put clothes in them for the testing. So you'd see that stuff laying all over the place in the tunnels. Channel 4 came and put a camera in there one time because they wanted to see this amazing new system. They lost the camera. They had to call in one of the maintenance experts to see what the camera was looking at so he could try and figure out where the thing had went in the baggage system. United did try using it for outbound baggage for a while, but it never worked the way it was supposed to. So eventually they scrap metaled it, and that was it. Again, that's underground. You notice the most nefarious things we have under there are things like bag carts and tugs. Where are the lizard people? I truly never met any lizard people at DIA. But if you go into the UFO world, they strongly believe, certain people, I'll say, that there's this reptilian race that has been working either for or against the US government. And the whole conspiracy is that DIA is the base of the New World Order. And once we've had the nuclear apocalypse, the reptilian race and the human race will come together to repopulate the planet. I wanted to write a novel my entire life, still haven't pulled it off, but I can't make this stuff up. This is what grows out of all of this stuff. So no lizard people, sorry. Just a couple other areas underneath the tunnel system. You can see where the bags come down from level 3, where they're sorted. I can absolutely say there are no aliens whatsoever in those baggage systems. None. Now, here's what's interesting about this. One of the news stations came out to do a piece on the underground system and say, you know, hey, is all this conspiracy stuff true? Well, they're sitting there talking to the public information officer, and they're actually filming kind of down. Let's see if I can get it. They're filming kind of down in this area. Well, the PIO is looking kind of towards the wall. The camera's facing where that long drive is. And as the PIO is talking, behind him comes an alien in a golf cart, got an alien head and everything else, and comes driving by right through the camera. And the PIO just kind of looks over and goes, yeah, that's one of them. It wasn't staged. The assistant security director at the time, this happened after I left, I'm not guilty for this one, he just thought it would be hilarious. So he took an alien mask, jumped in a golf cart, waited for the cameras to run, and drove right by there. And the PIO didn't miss a beat. He just picked right up on it and ran with it. So that was kind of the beginning of a lot of the people at DI having fun with this. Because after a while, you hear so many conspiracy theories and passengers ask you all the time about it. Finally, you're like, okay, screw this. We'll just feed this because, well, that's more fun. There was a conspiracy theory that we were using the airport to store the dead bodies of government dissidents, and that we would use the underground tunnels to ship those bodies all the way down to Colorado Springs at NORAD. I don't know what NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, wants with a bunch of bodies, but how did that get started? Well, our radios were publicly accessible at the time. Anybody could listen in. Today, they're encrypted. There's still some frequencies you can pick up, but back then anybody could listen in. In fact, my Nana, that was her hobby. She'd sit there with her police scanner and listen to the police fire calls all night long. We could also pick up the airport ops calls. And we were talking one night about where we're going to put this dead body, because people come in every day. People have a heart attack on a plane or something like that. I mean, there's tens of thousands of people coming in the airport every day, and one of them is going to die. Well, at the time, we didn't have a morgue. Just nobody thought of it at the time. We had one at Stapleton. We didn't have one here. So we picked the coolest place in the entire airport we could find, which was the dockmaster's office. The dockmaster would sit just off the left of the screen here in a small office, and then would control the deliveries of things coming into the loading dock. Somebody had the bright idea to shove this guy's body in there with the person working. Most of us were like, well, glad it's not us, but who came up with this stupid idea? Nobody wants to, you know, sit in there with a dead body. Thankfully, the dockmaster actually didn't care, and we got away with that one because she probably could have sued us for a whole lot of money. So they had to finally build some facilities out there. So that went out over the radio that now we've got dead bodies at the airport. Illuminati headquarters, there it is. It's the airport comm center. And this is where a lot of people think, oh, this is the headquarters of the New World Government. Well, there's an emergency operations center behind me where this picture was taken. The other side is maintenance and train system. Well, the other kind of sneaky thing is, if all of this gets taken out, there's an entire backup facility out in the airfield. I don't want to reveal where it's at publicly, but they can stand that up within 30 minutes and literally be running the airport from that location. So there's your Illuminati headquarters. And there was a lot of tours ahead of time before we opened it about this place. And it somehow became the Airport Communications Center, eventually became Illuminati headquarters. I guess if you use your imagination enough, that stuff can happen. So the bag tunnels, or the baggage system. This is where I come in. The oversized bag bins. When we started at Denver, we didn't have these things. We never had these at Stapleton. So when they installed them, we didn't know what they were. And they're like, oh, they're for bags and golf clubs. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. What do you call them? No, it's just the baggage carousel. And I'm like, no, the baggage carousel is, no, I can't. Well, let me go back on it. But anyway, the baggage carousel was the other carousels where the thing comes around and spins and does all that stuff. And they're like, well, no, those are carousels too. Okay. Those of us in ops at the time, if there was a maintenance issue or an injury or something, we had to let them know, are you at the baggage carousels or are you at the baggage carousels? And oftentimes it was very important with that distinction or else they wouldn't know where to go. So we started calling them coffins over the radio. And that combined with the dead bodies, us calling them coffins all the time. Yeah, we'll respond to the coffins. Hey, we got a problem down here at the coffins. Which side is it? East side, level 6 or level 5. It was just a normal thing we did. Well, pretty soon we started seeing it pop up in the press that Denver International Airport has all these coffins. So that's literally the origin of that story. Not nearly as exciting as most people think. The Close Encounters of the Third Kind conspiracy theory. Those of us of a certain age remember when the movie came out. The movie was called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And let's see, there we go. There was the marquee for it. If I decided to angle my camera right now, I actually have a small version of that on my wall here in my home office. The movie came out in 1977, and it was about aliens visiting planet Earth. And it was blockbuster. I think it was the #2 movie of the year, or number 2 soundtrack, #3 movie of the year. Obviously, you can go see it anywhere now, iTunes or whatever. Well, the conspiracy problem is this. The coordinates in the movie, the lat long in the movie, said that it's supposed to be at Devil's Tower, Wyoming. Well, the real latitude longitude is not in Devil Towers, Wyoming. Now, even in the movie, they pull out a globe and they look the latitude and longitude up, and they're like, yep, there it is, Devil's Tower, Wyoming. It's not. Now, for years, people have thought it's been at Denver International Airport, if you look up the lat longitude. Google Earth had an Easter egg for a while where if you type the lat long from the movie, it would actually show to the middle of Denver International Airport. That was an Easter egg. It was never true. The actual latitude longitude is near a farm in Alt, Colorado. Why didn't they use the actual lat long? I don't know. But that's where literally it ended up. So that one's always been kind of strange to me. Denver International embraced this. They did a screening of the movie in, was it 2017 or something like that, to show the 20th year anniversary. Bunch of guys in maintenance created a bunch of alien heads, and they did like this art exhibit and pulled it off as like, these are real alien skulls that we dug up when we were building the airport. And it was all tongue in cheek, just as a way to laugh at themselves, really, and to kind of put that out there. So Blue Mustang, aka Lucifer. This thing's been blamed for everything from being a centerpiece for Satan to who knows what. It's just got all sorts of issues with it. Well, the original artist, Louis Jimenez, very famous sculptor, when he was building Blue Mustang, that's its original name, by the way, is Blue Mustang, the entire bust, which was suspended, fell on him. And it cut his femoral artery, and he was dead within a minute. It just bled out that quick. His son and the other members of the family actually finished the horse. So already the thing's got a storied past. It killed the person that was creating it. Well, then they put the red lights in the eyes, and this freaked everybody out, because now the son said this is an homage to his dad, who did a lot of work with neon. And I'm sitting here thinking, neon comes in a lot of colors besides red. But they decided red was the color. The locals, all of us here in Denver, started calling the thing Lucifer. And eventually, even the airport, not officially changing its name, but that's how they refer to it as well. There's things like it means death. It represents the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But the backstory is tragic, but really that's all it is. The Freemason conspiracy theories. This really gets into whether you believe in the whole Freemason conspiracy or not, because there is there's my remote. There is the Freemason symbol right there on the cornerstone for the airport. And also it talks about the New World Airport Commission. Well, the term New World Order is a trigger word for the conspiracy theorists. I should know, I've been studying these folks since the early 1990s. The whole thing is that once the apocalypse is over, the Freemasons will come back, establish this new world order and worship Lucifer. Not Lucifer, Lucifer, different context. But that is all part of a completely separate conspiracy theory. The only reason it got wrapped in a DIA is because the Freemason symbol is on the cornerstone. But also Freemasons are people that like design and build stuff and engineers and so forth. So naturally it's there. So whether that conspiracy theory is true depends on whether you buy into the conspiracy theory from the Freemasons. The weird artwork. Well, here's the painter painting his weird artwork. If you've ever watched a conspiracy theory show, and I try and catch all of them because I'm weird and have weird hobbies, but anyway, when they show the Nazi symbolism and they say, this is really, really weird, why would the airport do this? Watch. I bet 9 times out of 10, they'll never show the rest of the mural, because the rest of the mural goes on to paint a picture of how peace defeats war. They don't talk about that part. And if I'm watching one of these shows and they don't talk about that part, then I'm like, okay, I'll turn you off, because you're clearly trying to represent something that is not true. You're not showing the entire picture. So yeah, does it look a little creepy and weird? Yeah. But ultimately, they don't ever show the other mural where peace conquers hate. So that's where that conspiracy theory started. Here's a little known conspiracy theory, but if you dig a little deeper, you'll find it out there. Somebody came online and they said that if you look at the barbed wire on the security fence, and I took this picture, and if you look at the angle on it, you can clearly see they're angling outward. Well, the theory is that they angled inward, because Denver ultimately was also going to be a gigantic prison for government dissidents. You know, the ones we were killing in the coffins and sending down to NORAD. Again, can't make this stuff up. Well, all you have to do is drive to the airport and you can see all the barbed wire faces outwards. We think what they might have seen is in one of the air cargo areas where cargo is stored, the barbed wire would face a different direction, or look like it would face a different direction, because of the way that cargo was stored inside the perimeter fence. But the entire perimeter fence, the barbed wire goes out. The gargoyles, and you saw the video earlier. This one truly did puzzle me for a long time, but gargoyles actually have their history and their lore is that their scary faces are there to scare away evil spirits. If you go into the history of gargoyles, if you got that kind of time on your hands, which apparently I do, it's to remind people that, you know, there's evil out there and there's a better life. There's a better way to do things. And they've been used this way since medieval times. Also, when these things were built on these castles and cathedrals, they were used for water drainage. So it was kind of a dual purpose with that. To this day, I really don't, I walk in there, I'm like, really? The gargoyle in a suitcase? What, I mean, you couldn't come up with something better, you know, like maybe a bald eagle or something? I don't know. That's what they decided on. So what really happened out there? This is just a sequence of slides because a lot of people have only seen the airport in its current configuration. You never knew what it looked like when we were building all of this, when we were going through the baggage tests, and thousands of bags had to run through that system. When we were building out the facility itself, as it slowly started coming together, the construction was just amazing out there. I mean, literally hundreds of contractors, everybody doing different kinds of work. I'll tell you another little secret. The reason the airport kept getting delayed wasn't just because of the bag system. A lot of things were not ready out there. We'd be driving around the airfield and be like, we're on a taxiway or a runway. This was before we opened. And I'm like, does it look like the pavement ends up there? And so we slam on the brakes, come to a screeching halt. We'd get to the end of some taxiway and we'd look over and it'd be like, oh, there's an 8-foot drop off where they haven't finished the taxiway. Meanwhile, they're talking on TV about, no, the airport's ready to go except for the baggage system. We're like, no, we have runways and taxiways with 8-foot drop offs. That's probably not, a good idea. Some of the original designs of the terminal building and one of the original models of the terminal. One thing you might notice here is these two buildings here and this big building here. That was where the hotel was originally supposed to be, but they moved it to the opposite end. I was part of that decision as to why it moved. All I can really say about it was for security reasons. There's your original tunnels. You can actually see the center tunnel here where the train system is and the original bag tunnels being constructed. There's inside the terminal building. This was, some of you familiar with the signature flight support. There's the original facility as it was being constructed. This was Concourse C with the tower on it. And my dad actually took that picture from Concourse B, from the B Concourse Tower. This was right before we opened. There's no oil, nothing on the ramp. It was purely spotless. And then again, we opened the airport February 28th, 1995. It's the last major airport that has ever been open. And so far, nothing else is on the plans for building another one. So it's really, truly a once in a lifetime experience with that. And what's DIA's position on this? We can't beat him, join him. And actually, I have a technical thing on my side. Please give me about 1 second here. I'm going to go off camera. So what I can honestly tell you is there is no alien life whatsoever at Denver International Airport. It's all a ruse, doesn't exist. Oh, sorry. Sometimes, the energy to maintain this form, kind of gets a little waned a little bit. So that's really the true purpose of the Red Bull, is so I can maintain my human form. Even I'm buying into this stuff. This is Denver's website, and you can go on there. They'll talk about all the different conspiracy theories, even not all of them. You've heard more of them than I've talked, or than they have. This is part of the construction sheeting. So their brand literally has become the conspiracy theory. Even Lucifer gets involved. So when it comes right down to it, who are you going to believe? Conspiracy theories, not conspiracy theories. I think in some cases there's some validation for that. I think the close encounters thing is really weird, because why would you select that? I think it's just about, I don't know, can't remember the exact distance, but it's not that far from Denver to Colorado from a straight line. That one always kind of confused me. But most of the rest of these have very simple explanations to them. That was before they built the hotel. And that's that. So, happy to take questions if you got any.
Well, Jackie says it's definitely aliens. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I've had my own sightings, and two of them, in fact. I have a lot of friends who are F-16 pilots down in Arizona. They've talked about chasing weird stuff before. The Navy in 2019 released the Tic Tac videos and said, we don't know what this stuff is either. So yeah, there could be something out there that we're just not aware of.
I know there's been recent reports in the mainstream media of, naval pilots specifically coming out and saying, oh, I've seen this, but we're still not sure what it is. And that's just, this month. So interesting. Good things to think about.
Yeah, a couple of them have went on. There's a TV show, UFO Unidentified something. It's a series that's been running for a couple of years, and 60 Minutes just did a bit last night on it. Not only did they release the footage, but a couple of the pilots that were actually in the plane shooting that have come out and said, yeah, we don't know what it is either. And if you listen to the tapes, one of the pilots says, well, those are drones. And they're like, no, not everybody knows those are drones. We don't have drones that can do that quite yet, that are that large, that have that maneuverability that we know of. What we don't know is what they're building at Area 51, because we didn't know they were building the SR-71 or the stealth fighter, the B-2. Former flight instructor of mine flew F-117s for years, and it was all very, very hush-hush. So we don't know what technologies they might be developing out there, or what origin that has.
I think it's great. I think it's awesome that Denver is embracing it. I think it's hilarious, and it's fantastic to keep the conversation going as well. It's never a boring airport, so that's for sure.
It really isn't. And sorry, my hair gets messed up when I go to my alien side. When I heard the announcement that Kim Day's retiring, I was kind of sad, because I know why. She needs to take care of her health and so forth. I do a lot of training out at Los Angeles International, where she used to be the director, up at Seattle Tacoma, where she used to be the director many years ago before LA. And I think she's done extraordinary things at Denver International, and this is one of them. In fact, she came up with this one, the canine therapy dogs that they use at Denver International. She titled it CATS, C-A-T-S, the Canine Airport Therapy Squad. And I always thought one of the PIOs came up with that one. No, she came up with that one. That was a director of the airport. It was one of the most respected people in our industry, because she's just been so extraordinary. But she was the one that said, you know what, let's just embrace this thing and run with it. It's become their brand.
Yeah, I love that it's been embraced too, because as a flight attendant, when I used to fly into Denver before I lived here, I would see those posters on the wall. I'm like, what is this? And my youngest brother would ask me all about it when we would come visit our friends out here, because he's about to be 20, so he eats all of it up. And then he and my mom helped move my husband and I out here, and when we took them to the airport, he was so pumped to see Lucifer.
That's awesome. That's great. My kids love Lucifer, so whatever.
I remember when that thing first was put up, and it freaked me out as a kid, because I was like, what am I looking at? And then, you get used to it living here, and it's just like a part of the airport experience. But for anybody who's never seen it, I'm sure it's a little like, all right.
It freaks a lot of people out. And if you're the least bit superstitious, you're really freaked out. I have some relatives and friends who are a little superstitious, and they're like, I'm not flying out of that airport because I got the big demonic horse. And I'm like, calm down, it had nothing to do with the planes. So Jackie, were you trying to ask a question, or was that somebody else?
No, I was going to say, how much did the lizard people pay you to give this presentation and debunk all of this stuff?
Well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. No. It's just been, I've been following this stuff for decades. And when Independence Aviation asked me to put something together, they said, can you put something together unique? I just kind of had a wild hair and said, yeah, sure. I know the origins of a lot of these things. Might as well put them together.
That's hilarious. As a new resident of Denver, I'm fully embracing it too.
Good deal. Just while I'm here, hi, Audrey. I don't know if she's going to come on and say hi or not, but she's one of my former students.
Hi, guys.
There you are.
Sorry, still recovering from our flight back from Hawaii. So.
Oh, that had to be rugged, yeah.
Those red eyes kick your butt for a couple days. So.
I can imagine they do. Yeah. 5 hours, you got to stay awake. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron, I think you're speaking, but it's difficult to hear you. Can you?
Oh no.
Okay. She said
Is
one.
that any better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So sorry, don't judge me. I'm driving, but I have to get to the store before 8 o'clock. But so my brother used to do Denver tours for people. And one of the things is they'd go to the Denver airport and they do kind of like a conspiracy tour. I don't know if it was given by someone from DIA or they just kind of like made it up on their own. But one of their stories was, I think it's Terminal 2 has all the Indian flute noise, music that always plays. And they said one of the conspiracies was when they first built the airport, like there kept like, I guess people started dying, or not people, but 1 or 2 people died and like came out on the baggage, whatever they're called.
Yeah, the baggage
terminal things.
Yeah.
And that like, or weird things just kept happening. And it was something like the airport or terminal was built on a Indian graveyard or something.
Yeah.
And the only way that they like contacted an Indian, and the only way that he said these weird things would stop happening is if they played the Indian flute music forever. And then that's why they play it there. Have you heard that one?
Yep. And I did my research on it. The Utes tribes were the ones that occupied that area, 100 plus years ago. And I even went back and looked at Indian burial ground locations that we know of and so forth, which tribes were moved, when they were moved. And I couldn't find anything to substantiate the burial ground theory. They do play the flute music. They had it up too loud for a while, and all the TSA personnel in A Concourse started complaining about it because that's all they could hear all day. So I think they had turned it down a little bit, but there was, as far as a individual coming out to kind of, do a blessing of the facility and stuff, I think that actually did happen. And I think it was part of, trying to keep people a little bit relaxed if you bought into that particular theory. But I imagine there were probably a few deaths. We didn't hear about too many of them during construction, but we had thousands of people on site. And if you've ever been on a big construction site, it can be a little bit dangerous out there. So I have no doubt that that we had some of that stuff occur. I mean, we responded to medical stuff all the time of people getting hurt, so it doesn't surprise me. In fact, the oversized baggage bins killed somebody one day. So I was there for that one too. Maybe I'm the problem. That's what I'm starting to think. Anyway, no, we had a call that somebody was stuck in the oversized bag bin. We quit calling them coffins by then, thankfully. Responded down there, and this guy had sat in the oversized bin. Security officer said, sir, could you not sit there because that thing could start? And he basically told her to kiss off. So she went to go get a Denver cop to come back and help. While she was gone, that oversized bin started up, and his hips had expanded a little bit, just kind of swollen because he'd been sitting there for a while, and he couldn't get out of the thing. And it came around and hit the wall and literally just twisted him. And I was one of the first responders for that. And it was not anywhere pretty than you're thinking right now. It sucked. Amazingly, the guy was still alive, but he was pronounced dead at the hospital a couple hours later. So the coffins killed somebody. There you go. You can start running with that theory.
Man, that is a crazy story. Thank you so much for answering that. I'm glad I know the deal now.
What a way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was preventable.
She told him not to sit there.
That was it. She told him not to sit there. We ended up paying for therapy for her because she was really messed up afterwards. She felt she could have done more at the time. And the city actually settled with the family because they said there wasn't enough places to sit in the baggage claim area. So he really didn't have a choice. He had to sit there. So there ended up being a settlement with the family.
Wow.
If you work at an airport, you literally are used to that. You see that all the time. Somebody will walk in, slip and fall, usually doing something they're not supposed to do. And then later you hear about the settlement. So I had one guy who jumped in my ops vehicle one day, smoked a joint. He worked in the badging office at the time. So smoked a joint in my ops vehicle. then drove across the airfield to meet with the director of operations to complain about something, and then drove back to my offices, parked the car out front and went back to work in the badging office, and where he just reeked of pot. Denver police came down, gave him the test and everything like that. They hauled him off site, arrested him, and he countersued the city and turned out getting a settlement out of it. And I'm like, wow, maybe I should smoke pot in my ops vehicle. How much money did he get? But it's just amazing some of the stuff you see legally after the fact in some of these situations. And yeah, it did take a while to get the stench out of my ops vehicle.
I believe that. It's got some staying power.
It does. It does. We turned it over to maintenance and they had to like steam clean the whole thing and stuff like that. Otherwise, every time somebody got in the vehicle, they thought I'd been in there smoking it.
Well, we are running up to 7:45. If we have any more questions, we can take, I think, one more and then we'll call it an evening.
Can we take a photo really fast? And Jeff, can you change to can you call your alien friend to take a photo with us?
I'll see if he can come back here. Give me a second on that. I like that you want the picture of the alien instead of me, so.
It's your true form, right?
Well, my daughter recently called me, what she called me, annoyingly likable, so I don't know how to take that.
Take it as a compliment for sure.
Okay, now I gotta find it. I can't even see through these eyes very well. I'm still learning.
Can't see anything in this helmet.
There you go.
1, 2, 3. And then you can tell Jeff to come back now, alien.
I wasn't smiling. Let me try it again. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Easier to take off than it is to put on. Well, hey, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for having me, and love the questions. And oh, Audrey, I see you've got a friend there now, so that's cool. But thank you. I really appreciated this.
Well, thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
On behalf of
Thank
our chapter,
you.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Good.
That was
Take care.
fun.
All right, have a
Bye,
good night.
everyone. Have a
Bye.
good day.
Bye.
Bye.